Hello, I'm Russell Michaels. Thank you for joining me and welcome to Cine Politics, where we discuss the social and, of course, the political issues which have inspired all kinds of films and documentaries from all around the world. And on today's programme, we're discussing the documentary Blood in the Mobile by filmmaker Frank Poulsen. Poulsen comes from Denmark and he uses a mobile phone from the Finnish company Nokia, which makes 1/3 of the world's mobiles. But he learns that the electronics inside many mobile phones are manufactured from rare minerals which come from illegal mines in the Democratic Republic of Congo. There, the money from so-called blood minerals and the electronics industry are helping to finance war and atrocities which have claimed the lives of over 5 million people. First, Frank Poulsen tries to get answers from Nokia. Is his phone contributing to war? And when that fails, Frank decides to take his camera and journey to the dark heart of the issue, the Congo's perilous blood mineral mines.
Can it really be true that our phones contain minerals that are financing war in the Congo? And if the world has known about this for a long time, hasn't anybody done anything about it? Or is the Congo just too far away? I can't live with the fact that my phone might be financing war. I can't just keep on using my phone to send loving SMSs to my wife or talk to my daughters if it has cost life in the Congo. Yes, hello, my name is Frank Poulsen. I would like to speak to somebody from communications.
Hold on, please. So, there's no one who can help you at the moment.
Okay, but who is it that I should speak to?
I'm actually at the moment in a meeting. I don't have any contact person. We have just this one phone number here. I don't know exactly where the best person for you to speak to, where that person would be located. So it's possible that that person could be located somewhere else, or...
Oscar Södergren from Nokia. I can't take your call right now. But if you please leave a message or in urgent matters, please send SMS. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you.
Why is it they won't talk to me? Is it because they are using blood minerals? If that is true, it hardly matches their description of themselves as a human corporation. If there are blood minerals in my phone, it paints a completely new picture of Nokia. Maybe Nokia aren't as socially responsible as I thought they were. I'm on my way to the Congo. I want to see where these minerals are coming from and to see with my own eyes if they are financing war.
So, does Frank prove the connection between blood minerals and Nokia's phones? And what defence does Nokia and the industry have after knowing about this issue for the past 10 years? Well, here to discuss Blood in the Mobile are my guests Vava Tampa, Executive Director of Save the Congo, and we have Ian Hayden-Smith, Editor of the International Film Guide. Very warm welcome to the programme to both of you.
Thank you.
Starting with you, Ian, what kind of investigator do we have in Frank Poulsen? And does Nokia really deserve to be the target of his film?
I think Frank Poulsen's a very interesting filmmaker. He's a very good observational filmmaker. There is some sequences in Africa that he films that are both shocking and fascinating, and even tiny asides. There's one moment where he films a traffic cop being bribed, and it's interesting, adding texture to the picture that he portrays. My problem with him is that I'm not entirely convinced he's a great investigative journalist. At the start, I thought he might be in the vein of Nick Broomfield, the great British documentary filmmaker. But I ended up thinking towards the end of a film, he's more like the American filmmaker, the director of Super Size Me, Morgan Spurlock, in that often he's trying to use a sledgehammer to crack a nut, and he needed a little bit more subtlety in approaching some organizations. In terms of Nokia itself, I find it quite fascinating that he chooses just to pick on Nokia. I think it's a good place to start. And obviously he feels very personally aggrieved by that, but he should have opened it up.
And obviously Sony Ericsson, for example, make phones, but Nokia is the world's leading corporation making phones. We don't know what's inside them, of course. And Vava, could you explain how, from these mines in the Democratic Republic of Congo, minerals get converted into war?
Right.
And
so essentially this is the process. There is two parts of it. The first thing is armed groups will take control of an area, a town or a village. In this case, Walikale. BC is in Walikale, and BC is, you know, the distance from BC to the nearest road is 40 kilometers.
And we should explain, BC is the mine that the filmmaker finally gets to.
Yes, and it's also a name of a small town. So the first thing to do is to take control of the town or the village, and then after that there is two options they have. One is either they can abduct children from the village to force them to work for them, and then the leaders, the rebel leader, will sell those natural resources to middlemen, or they can simply open up the mine, sort of a liberal point of view, open the mine so anyone can come, mine, and then they will have to tax those people mining, the artisanal miner, tax them, and then
and guns are being bought with this money.
So those money, the revenues, are then used to buy guns. BC, for instance, that mine which we see in the documentary, we will see in the documentary, the revenue from BC in tax alone is $100,000 every single month.
Very briefly, do you agree with the charge that the electronics industry is directly or indirectly financing the war?
Yes and no. It's a funny issue. Well, directly yes, because obviously without the finances, armed groups, armed leaders, rebel leaders cannot continue their campaigns of killings and raping people in the Congo. No, in the sense, the root cause, the reason this conflict has gone for such a long time is because the Kinshasa government has failed.
Okay, now briefly, Ian, we learn about this history of Nokia, and we haven't got much time to discuss it, but it used to be a rubber company in the Congo,
and in colonial times.
Yeah.
And there is a link that's made, which is quite shocking to me. I had no idea that Nokia, in a former name, it became Nokia in the late 60s, was involved in the rubber industry, and there is a connection made between that period in time and the present day, and is it another form of industrial colonialism and slave labour?
Which was producing rubber, we should explain, for the tyres of automobiles 100 years ago. Yep. So Nokia has been on the front edge of some very interesting technologies. Well, let's see a clip where Bernard, a press officer for the UN, warns Frank about the military groups, the Mai Mai and the FDLR, who could decide that Frank won't come back alive from the BC mine.
Even though the UN is very carefully about commenting on what goes on, they don't seem to have a problem flying me to Walikale.
I don't think Chama will take the film.
Okay.
We are going to be here in Walikale.
Yes.
Where they kill people.
Yeah.
Pay attention, anything can happen.
Yeah, sure.
These people are uncontrolled. So,
yes, sure.
So anything can happen, man. And you will be deep in the forest. 90 kilometers in the forest is not a joke. So be careful. It seems that a group of Mai Mai coming from 40 kilometers away came to loot, okay? Came to loot the diggers, the people who were digging in the forest. Digging for whom? We don't have any idea. And is it true that it is the Mai Mai, or is it the FDLR who came back to try to take back what they consider their goods? The coltan, the cassiterite, everything that they are taking from BC. From BC, you know. Who is selling it, you know? It was under control of FDLR. Can you imagine? And then it's the Congolese businessmen. It's the Congolese businessmen who used to come and buy and then bring it to Goma. Goma to Rwanda or Uganda, Uganda to Europe. To do what? Mobile phone computers. So you understand? And after that, from the money, they buy guns. Of course, they buy guns to continue war.
It's a very chilling moment in the film. It kind of becomes like a thriller there. But Vava, Bernard describes some appalling atrocities, brutal murders. What groups are committing these murders and atrocities, and why? Military groups, presumably.
Yes, so Walikale, this town is the largest area in North Kivu, and Walikale is home to the largest deposit of tin in the Congo. And also Walikale is also home to 5 the 5 most dangerous armed groups in Congo. So you have the Mai Mai, you have the Mai, which is a local armed groups. You have the FDLR, whose leadership were responsible for the genocide in Rwanda, and then you have a section of the Congolese army which has become independent, the 212 Brigade. Dangerous. Really, really dangerous. And then you have another guy who used to work for a mining company, but in 2000 I decided, you know what, I'll become an armed leader, and created his own militia groups. And then you have another colonel, another general, who used to be linked, an officer to Laurent Kunda, who also created his own militia groups.
And they're vying to control these ores, which are called coltan, which it becomes tungsten for mobile phones and electronics, and also cassiterite, which is a tin. So basically, briefly, do you think that the presenter, the filmmaker, was taking incredible risks going there?
Amazing risk. He actually placed himself in harm's way. You need to understand that Congo is a country where investigative journalism, along with human rights activism, is one of the most dangerous jobs to do. So he actually placed himself in a dangerous, in harm's way.
As we'll see in the next clip, of course. Now, Ian, there's a ministry official he meets before he gets there who admits quite openly that he's not only working for the Ministry of Mining, but he's also an industrialist with interests in the mines themselves. Is this a kind of corruption that's obvious, or do you think it's a clue about government involvement?
There's no doubt there's a level of corruption, but it's also the way it seems that the system works there. However, we have to be mindful not to be in the West as a whole, not to be hypocritical, because we only have to look at Timothy Geithner and Hank Paulson, their links to Goldman Sachs, and then their roles in the Treasury, or Halliburton and Dick Cheney. It's very easy to look at other countries, particularly when something's so obvious, and overlook the faults in our own system. And I think corruption has been proven over the last 10 years is rife in so many different governments around the world.
To bring it back to Nokia, I have a quote from their website, which I'll read quickly. Since 2001, we've required written assurance from all of our tantalum capacitor suppliers that the tantalum from the coltan does not originate from the illegal mines in DRC. I think you've seen their website. They have a social responsibility section. Are you convinced that the company is doing enough?
Far from true, not at all. I mean, one of the call that NGOs from across the world have been making to Nokia as well as other mobile phone industries is that simply publish your supply chain. Tell us where you buy your stuff from, and then we will be able to sort of tell where they're getting their stuff from. And Nokia, like anyone else, have refused to do so.
This is a trade secret, of course. Well, let's pause there. We'll talk more about the supply chain because it is complicated and it goes to many countries. So let's pause there and see a clip where the intrepid Frank Paulson reaches the edge of the perilous BC mine and descends into what can only be described as the Congolese version of hell.
Okay, so this is how the armed groups are making money on the mining. They don't even have to leave the forest. They let the local population do the hard work, and then they impose taxes on everyone. And to get in and out of the mining area, you also have to pay some money. Now I have arrived. Finally, I'm here. This is what I've been looking for. In this place, people die so we can get mobile phones. This mountain is full of improvised mining shafts, and I get a feeling that the whole mountain could collapse at any moment. 5 years ago, this place was only jungle. Today, between 15 to 25,000 people live and work here. The mine which Chance worked in until recently is almost 100 meters deep. Chance has told me that it takes such long time to crawl down and up again that he sometimes stayed down there for a week without coming up. Every month people die here when one of these holes collapses.
makambako kabeza te mukamita wento bosa ka biloko ya te ngani ka biloko wana te yo hier n'est pas dit qu'on filme on ka des ordres à pam Ivrani na bo ba biloko no bikela ko pa ko kata ko ngana tindo filme ngai ngana tindo filme nga po na nini
Extraordinary scene there, and it goes on in the film for quite a long time. It's very claustrophobic. Ian, do you think that the filmmaker is brave or actually reckless with his own and perhaps other people's lives? And the young boy Chance as a character, what do you think of his story?
The relationship with Chance I'm somewhat concerned about, because later on in that clip we see the men turning to Chance saying, "Who is this with you?" And when the filmmaker's gone away, Chance still has to work there, and that's slightly worrying. As far as the filmmaker himself, he's incredibly brave. The fact is, it's this footage alone of any section of the movie that's going to move people, that's going to have a reaction from a very large number of people, from anyone who sees it. It's very, very powerful. But the camp itself is astonishing. It's perverse to say the word, but it's almost brilliant in the way that they're creating money out of charging people to come in and go out of the camp, as well as charging for the ores that they're actually mining.
And many are trapped and can't leave, of course, because they can't mine enough to get out. The big question, surely, Vava, is what control is there from the DRC government, and why can't they control this mine particularly?
Well, the Congolese government has lost control of BC. I mean, I have some good news. The good news is in May of this year, BC actually returned at the hand of the Congolese government, but for the last 5 years, BC has been controlled by militia groups and armed groups, and as well as BC and other parts of eastern part of Congo, the Congolese government simply has no control whatsoever. And
so since this film was finished, has anything changed?
Well, only in May, that was the first time when the section of the Congolese army which became independent somehow.
Right.
And this is the only country in the world where the army can actually become independent. Became independent, decided to leave the mine after a few crimes against humanity were committed and reported. So the Kinshasa government simply has no control whatsoever.
Briefly, what about Western nations? What kind of pressure could they put on the Congolese government to change the situation?
Well, a lot. Britain, for instance, or the US, or France, for that matter, or Belgium, for that matter as well. We have a lot of political leverage as well as economical leverage
in
over the Congolese.
Millions of pounds and
millions of pounds are given to the Congolese. The US gives approximately $700 million every single year to the Congolese government, $350 million directly to the Congolese government, and the other $450 million through UN and other agencies. So that is that gives the US a huge political leverage over the government. And we also have other tools, such as the ICCs, freezing assets, placing a travel ban, and so forth. All of those can be utilised to actually deter the situation.
But perhaps awareness about the issue is what needs to happen as well at a grassroots level, so more politicians can get involved. Let's see our last clip, where Frank finally meets a spokesman at Nokia's headquarters in Finland, and then he visits geologist Dr. Frank Melcher, who can interestingly tell the age of mineral ores.
Hello.
Hello.
Is this Mark? How are you?
I'm fine.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. So,
we have taken action since 2001 on these issues, where we first became aware of the fact that a raw material called coltan coming from Congo can be turned into tantalum. And tantalum is a material that is used in mobile phones, but also in all other electronic products.
Of course, yes.
And then we went to our suppliers, meaning companies who manufacture parts that are used in mobile phones, and asked them that, can you trace where tantalum that you're using is coming from? But we very quickly realized that there's a huge challenge in tracing metals. There is no mechanism to be 100% sure where the raw material is coming from. There's no labeling. You cannot trace or test from the material that which of the part of this particular metal is coming from which mines. It's impossible.
We will drill a small hole into that sample using a laser. So we would scan over such a sample for about 2-3 hours, and we will analyze the volume for its composition. This is the fingerprint, okay? And this is very typical for BZ. Here is Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda. BZ would be somewhere here. Okay, here's Walikale. BZ would be somewhere here. Basically almost in the white area here where there's no geology. So for every grain that we analyze here, we get the formation age, a geological age. And we can say, oh, this material must come from the DRC or it must come from Mozambique or whatever, because we know exactly how old these grains should be.
Ian, I found this section of the film scientifically fascinating. The statement from Nokia was there's no mechanism to be sure where the raw material is coming from. But do you agree that he does seem to have proved that that statement doesn't stand up?
It's true, but from Nokia's point of view, and this is what everyone's asking for now, is a transparency of the supply chain. Because I'm sure Nokia might get minerals from all around the area and not necessarily many different countries arriving in bags together.
Yeah.
What we need is a transparency of the supply chain, therefore we can work out where things come from.
What about this word, blood minerals? Is he successfully kind of politicizing it like blood diamonds?
Absolutely. I think it's essential that, I hate to use the phrase, but buzzwords like blood minerals are necessary because they begin to exist in the public sphere in the way that CFCs did in the late 1980s. Blood diamonds have, we saw with the Naomi Campbell case recently,
yes,
and the Hollywood film. And I think if people talk more and more, the general public talk more and more about blood minerals, it will exist as a greater, or have a greater impact in the public sphere, and have people start asking, where is my phone from? All the components.
Where's it all coming from? Well, Vava, what is, if Nokia is the best with social responsibility, what does this film say about the industry as a whole, especially in relation to the death toll?
Well, it gives you a clear idea that there has been no progress whatsoever in terms of industries, mobile phone industry getting their act together, and the consequences on the Congolese population has been tremendous, has been huge. I mean, we often talk about 5.4 million people killed,
yes,
and for people that is simply statistics, a number. But let's put it in context. That is equivalent to having a 9/11 every single day for 356 days,
wow,
having all their lives lost in the genocide in Rwanda, all their lives lost in the genocide in Darfur, all their lives lost in the great tsunami that struck Asia in 2005, all their lives lost in Bosnia in the mid-1990s, and their lives lost in Hiroshima and Nagasaki together.
That's
and then
astonishing.
doubled.
Would you actually say, though, that if Nokia and the other countries published their list of suppliers, that would actually save lives, very briefly?
It would help the situations. It would make it much easier. It would essentially sort of cut off the financial side of the conflict, and that's what we want. It would help. It wouldn't end the conflict. We have to be blunt, but it would help the situations.
So we've got to hope that trade secrets become public knowledge. Well, we have to end there, and it's a warm thank you to my guests, Ian Hayden-Smith and Vava Tampa. And also thank you, and I hope you'll join us again at the same time next week. But in the meantime, of course, we'd love to hear your views too. So please do email us at the address on the screen, cinepolitics@presstv.co.uk, or you can join our Facebook fan page and join the debate with your questions or any suggestions for future films to discuss. But for now, goodbye.